I need to tell you about the day I stood in a courthouse hallway holding an envelope with 15 $10 bills inside, waiting to erase a man's last name from my own life. I was 18. I had saved that money one shift at a time, folding it into an envelope the night before, and counting it 3 separate times so I wouldn't hand over the wrong amount. My hands weren't shaking. That's the part that still surprises me when I think back on it. After everything, I expected to feel something big. Instead, I felt calm, the kind of calm you only get after you've made peace with a decision long before you act on it. Here's what led me there. My father left when I was 6 years old. He packed a duffel bag, told me he'd be home by Friday, and then spent the next 12 years proving that Friday was a day that never actually came. He remarried a woman who made it her quiet mission to remind me, in 100 small ways, that I didn't belong in his new life. Not with shouting, not with anything anyone could point to and call cruel. Just absence, dressed up as circumstance. For years I kept a record of every promise he broke. A cheap notebook, the kind you buy at a dollar store, filled page by page with dates and canceled plans. I wasn't angry when I started it. I just needed proof that I wasn't imagining the pattern. Then came my graduation day. My father showed up. For a few seconds, I let myself believe that meant something. And then his wife opened her mouth in front of everyone I knew and said 8 words that were designed to end me. They didn't. But they did something else. They gave me the exact push I needed to walk into that courthouse. After the judge signed my new name into existence, I wrote my father a letter. 3 words. That's all. 3 words that landed harder than 12 years of silence ever had. I'm going to tell you the whole thing, from the duffel bag on the porch to the letter in the mailbox. Watching from where? Please comment. My name is Emily, and I'm 18 years old. Let me take you back to the summer I was 6, the night my father carried a navy blue duffel bag to his truck and told me he'd be back by Friday. I remember asking him if he was going camping. He crouched down, held my face in both hands, and kissed my forehead. Then Friday came, and Friday went, and he didn't come home. He moved into an apartment 40 minutes away, just far enough to have an excuse and just close enough that the excuse never quite held up. My mother didn't cry where I could see her. She put on her scrubs, worked her night shifts at the hospital, and came home every morning with dark circles under her eyes. But at night, through the wall, I heard her crying into her pillow so I wouldn't know. I knew anyway. That same week, my grandmother moved in. She brought her cast-iron skillet, her reading glasses, and an old quilt she'd made from my grandfather's flannel shirts. She cooked, cleaned, and drove me to school, and she never said much about my father except one thing. Your daddy loves you, baby. He just forgot how to show it. At 6 years old, you believe your grandmother the way you believe in gravity, without question. I didn't know yet who would end up changing everything. Her name was Sharon Whitman, and by the time I was 7.5, she became Sharon Whitman Coleman in a small backyard wedding at her parents' house, the kind of house with a brick mailbox and a lawn service that came every Tuesday. My mother dropped me off at the end of the driveway and told me to have fun. Sharon took my hand after the ceremony, looked me in the eye, and said we were going to be a family now. I wanted to believe her. I tried. That night, sitting on the porch steps waiting for my mother's headlights, I heard Sharon through the kitchen window. She was telling my father that I could visit, but not every weekend, that they needed their own space, that his ex-wife had me, and I was fine where I was. Not Emily, just the girl. My father mumbled something back I couldn't make out, and then there was nothing but the sound of dishes clinking in the sink. After that night, the visits started shrinking. Every weekend turned into every other weekend. Every other weekend turned into once a month. Once a month turned into whenever it happened to work out, which was almost never. Sharon never told him outright not to see me. She just always had a reason why now wasn't the time. I started keeping a notebook when I was 8, a plain black and white composition book. I didn't write in it because I was angry. I wrote in it because I needed something solid to hold on to, proof that the broken promises were real and not just a feeling I was making up in my head. Page 1. Dad said he'd come to my piano recital. He didn't. Page 4. Dad said he'd get me for Christmas Eve. He called at 3 in the afternoon to say something came up. Page 9. Dad said he'd call every Wednesday. He called for 3 weeks, then stopped. Page 14. Dad said he'd take me fishing like my grandfather used to. He texted at 7 in the morning to say Sharon wasn't feeling well and we'd have to reschedule. Reschedule was his favorite word. In his world, rescheduled plans never expired. They just piled up until neither of us bothered mentioning them anymore. Meanwhile, his child support check landed in our account on the first of every month without fail, and he held on to that number like it settled everything. I heard him tell one of my mother's friends once, when she asked why he'd missed my school play, that he took care of me. Just check the bank statements. Money instead of showing up. That was his math. One evening, my grandmother watched me filling in the notebook. She didn't ask to read it. She just looked at me over her glasses and said, "You keeping score, baby?" I told her I was keeping track. She nodded. Good. A woman should always know exactly where she stands. I didn't know it yet, but that notebook would end up being the last piece of proof I needed before I made the decision that changed my whole life. I was 12 the last time I ate Thanksgiving dinner at my father's house. Sharon hosted it beautifully. Cloth napkins, place cards written in calligraphy, a turkey that looked like it belonged in a magazine. When I walked in, she introduced me to a woman I'd never met as Robert's daughter from before. Not her stepdaughter, not Emily, just leftover furniture from an earlier version of the family. At the table, there were 14 chairs and 14 place cards, each one written in Sharon's careful handwriting. None of them had my name on it. I dragged in a folding chair from the garage and wedged it in beside my father. My plate hung half off the table's edge. My father saw it. His jaw tightened and he started to say something, but Sharon cut him off without even looking up from the cranberry sauce. "It's fine, Greg. Robert. She doesn't mind." I ate my dinner, washed my own plate, and went to the hallway to call my grandmother. She didn't ask why. She just said, 15 minutes, baby, and came to get me. On the drive home, we stopped at the diner on Route 9 and split a piece of pumpkin pie. "You don't have to earn a seat at anyone's table," she told me. "You already have one at ours." I never went back to that house for another holiday. I didn't make a scene about it. I just stopped going. The year I turned 14, my father forgot my birthday completely. Not the kind of forgetting where you're just busy, the kind where a person quietly slips out of your daily thoughts until someone else has to point out he'd missed it. 3 days after the date had passed, he finally sent a text. "Sorry, Nat. Crazy week. Happy belated." 2 words for a birthday, like I was a coworker he barely remembered. That same month, I found photos Sharon had posted online in an album called Our Little Family. Cookouts, a charity gala, my father grinning while holding a neighbor's baby. 12 pictures. I wasn't in a single one. I sat on my bed that night staring at Coleman printed on my school ID, saying it out loud, waiting to feel something like pride or belonging. All I felt was the weight of a name that belonged to a man who'd let 3 days pass before remembering my birthday existed. My grandmother found me on the porch with the ID still in my hand. I asked her if a last name could ever start feeling heavy. She thought about it for a long moment before answering. "A name is only as heavy as the person who gave it to you, baby. If they filled it with love and showed up for you, you carry it easy. If they didn't," she just shrugged, "then it's a weight." After that conversation, every time someone called me by that name, I felt exactly what she meant. When I was 16, working the register at Mrs. Whitaker's little bookshop after school, my phone lit up with a text from my father. "You have a brother now, Michael Robert Coleman, 7 pounds 4 ounces, mom and baby doing great." Mom, meaning Sharon. I stared at that screen so long my boss asked if I was all right. I told her it was just family stuff, deleted the text, and went back to shelving paperbacks. That weekend, Sharon called my grandmother, not my mother, not me, to announce the news properly, and referred to the baby as her first child. My grandmother sat me down at the kitchen table afterward and told me what Sharon had said. "They can call him whatever they want," I told her. "They can," my grandmother agreed. "But you were here first, and nothing changes that." I wasn't invited to the hospital. My father sent one text about his son and moved on the same way he always moved on from anything involving me, fast and without looking back. That night I opened my laptop and searched 4 words. How to legally change your name at 18. I wasn't angry. I was just curious, the way you get curious about an exit once a room starts feeling too small. I noted the filing fee, closed the browser tab, and wrote it down in my notebook anyway. $200, 8 shifts at the bookshop to cover it. I want to pause here for a second. If you've ever looked at a family photo and realized you weren't in it, not because you were behind the camera, but because nobody thought to include you, you already understand exactly what this felt like. Tell me in the comments if you've been there. And if this story is landing with you, go ahead and subscribe now, because what happened at my graduation is something I still think about every single day. 2 months before graduation, I called my father. I couldn't tell you exactly why. Maybe it was the last flicker of that same stubborn hope I'd carried since I was 6, the one that kept whispering, maybe this time. He answered on the third ring with the TV playing behind him and my little brother babbling in the background. I told him graduation was June 14th. "I'll be there, Nat," he said, easy as agreeing to pick up milk. I reminded him he'd said the same thing about my piano recital. There was a pause, then he told me this was different, that he promised. I hung up feeling the same flat calm I always carried where he was concerned. The calm of someone holding a lottery ticket she already knows won't win, but buys anyway because it costs less than hoping. Downstairs, my mother was packing her bag for her night shift. She paused in the doorway when I told her he said he'd come. "He said a lot of things," was all she said, before zipping her bag and heading out the door. She'd spent 12 years never bad-mouthing him, never poisoning the well, just quietly being both parents while he was somewhere else being neither. That night I opened the notebook to a new page and wrote, "June 14th, graduation. Dad says he'll be there." I left the next line blank, planning to fill it in afterward. Graduation day arrived warm and bright over the football field. I sat in my cap and gown with the rest of the senior class, scanning the bleachers until I found my grandmother in her Sunday hat, already dabbing at her eyes before the ceremony had even started, and my mother beside her, still in her hospital scrubs from swapping a shift to be there. Then I spotted my father, 4 rows back, and sitting right next to him was Sharon, sunglasses pushed up into her hair, my little brother squirming on her hip. He hadn't come alone. He'd brought the whole production. When they called my name through the speakers, I walked across that stage feeling like the moment was already a goodbye, even before I understood exactly what it was I was saying goodbye to. After the ceremony, I found my father waiting on the grass. He stepped forward and hugged me, stiff and unpracticed, like the motion had gone rusty from disuse. "I'm proud of you, Nat," he said. 4 words I had been waiting 12 years to hear. I let myself have that moment. 3 seconds, maybe 5. Then a woman from our church walked over, smiling, and told Sharon she must be so proud. Sharon shifted my little brother on her hip, smiled without it reaching her eyes, and said, "Oh, I'm not her mother. Robert has history." The woman looked confused, glanced at me, and glanced back. And that's when Sharon turned her head just enough to make sure everyone standing nearby could hear her clearly, and said, "You were never really his daughter anyway." 8 words, delivered as casually as a comment about the weather. Nobody spoke. I looked at my father. He looked down at the grass. No correction, no defense. Just the same decision he'd been making for 12 years, right there in front of everyone. My grandmother was at my side in seconds, her hand steady on my elbow. "Let's go home, sweetheart," she said. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just left. That night, sitting on my grandmother's back porch with the crickets going and the smell of honeysuckle in the air, I asked her to tell me about my grandfather. She told me he'd built her house himself, board by board, over 14 months. She told me their family name, Whitfield, was Old English for a clearing near White Fields, a place where you leave something behind to make room for something new. I asked her if it was wrong to let go of a name that didn't feel like yours anymore. She didn't answer right away. When she did, she said, "A name should feel like home, Emily. If it doesn't, you have every right to find one that does." The next morning, I sat down and searched again, this time without closing the tab. File a petition at the circuit court, pay the filing fee, wait a few weeks for a hearing, appear before a judge. If there are no objections, the name change becomes final. No permission required once you're 18. I checked my savings from 2 years of shifts at the bookshop. It was enough. I opened my notebook to a blank page and wrote 2 words. New name, Whitfield. 2 weeks after graduation, my father called about what Sharon had said at graduation. She didn't mean it, he told me. You've been saying that about her for 12 years, I said. He promised to come see me that Saturday, just the two of us. Saturday morning, a text arrived instead. Sharon wasn't feeling well, could we reschedule? I read it once, set my phone down, ate breakfast, and went to work. That was the last entry I ever wrote in the notebook. Not because I stopped keeping track, but because there was nothing left worth tracking. I had finally run out of patience to keep believing him. If you think he should have felt guilty instead of scared once he realized what I was about to do, drop a comment and tell me. And if you've made it this far, thank you. Because the hearing is coming, and I need you to see exactly what happened inside that courtroom. That summer, I picked up extra shifts at the bookshop, not just for the filing fee but for a partial scholarship's worth of textbooks I still had to cover myself. Mrs. Whitaker noticed. You're saving up for something specific, she said one afternoon, not really a question. Something I should have done a long time ago, I told her. She just nodded and let it be. Twice a week I helped run the children's reading program, sitting with a little girl named Ella who brought me a new crayon drawing every week, her whole family holding hands, smiling. I taped each one to the bulletin board and told myself the tightness in my chest was just the summer heat. Then Mrs. Bennett called. She'd been at Sharon's house for a Bible study and noticed something on the hallway wall where all the family photos hung. A picture that used to be there, me at 4 years old, sitting on my father's lap at a county fair, was gone. In its place was a brand new studio portrait of just the three of them, matching outfits, white background. I thought you should know, she said. She hadn't just taken down a photo. She'd erased the proof that I was ever part of his life at all. On my 18th birthday, my mother baked a lemon cake and my grandmother brought sunflowers from her garden. We ate cake for breakfast because birthdays don't need rules. At 9:47 that morning, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Happy birthday, Nat. 3 words, no call, no visit. I set the phone face down on the counter and didn't say anything about it. After breakfast, I sat my mother and grandmother down at the table and told them I wanted to legally change my last name to Whitfield. My mother studied me carefully, the way she checks an X-ray at work, looking for cracks. Are you sure this is what you want, and not just what your anger wants? She asked. I'm not angry, Mom, I told her. I'm done waiting. She held my eyes for a long moment, then nodded. Then it's your decision. My grandmother squeezed my hand. I'll drive you to the courthouse. At the circuit court, I filled out the petition myself. Current legal name, Emily Ann Coleman. Requested name. I thought of my grandfather, of clearings and new beginnings, and wrote Emily Helen Whitfield, adding my grandmother's name without telling her first. The clerk asked my reason for the change. Personal, I said. I'd like to carry my mother's family name. I paid the filing fee in cash, counted the night before at my desk. The hearing was scheduled for several weeks out. It took only a few days for word to travel through town, the way it always does in a place like ours. My father called that Thursday evening, his voice higher and tighter than usual. Someone at the courthouse said you filed papers. What's going on? I told him I was changing my last name. Why would you do that? He asked. Because it hasn't felt like mine for a long time, I said. In the background, I heard Sharon's voice asking what was wrong. He called 4 more times that week. I didn't answer any of them. There was nothing left to say that the filing fee hadn't already said for me. Sharon didn't waste any time starting her own version of the story. She called my mother at work to say I was humiliating my father. She called 2 women from her Bible study group and a cousin in a nearby town, telling everyone the story she wanted told, that I was doing this out of spite, to hurt the family during a hard time with a new baby. Some people believed her. But the people who had actually stood in those bleachers at graduation, who had heard those 8 words with their own ears, weren't buying it. Mrs. Whitaker put it plainly. That woman said what she said, and now she's trying to rewrite the script. On the morning of the hearing, I wore the same white button-down shirt my mother had ironed for graduation. My grandmother drove, my mother rode in the back, and nobody said much on the way. The courtroom was small and plain, nothing like what you see in movies. When Judge Patricia Hale asked if I understood this was a permanent legal change and that it was my decision, made freely, I told her yes. She reviewed the file, found no objections on record, and signed the order. A small scratch of a pen, and 12 years ended in one stroke. Effective today, your legal name is Emily Helen Whitfield. Behind me, my grandmother gasped when she heard her own name read aloud. She hadn't known I'd added it. Outside in the September sun, the three of us walked to the car together, holding hands, nobody able to talk until we all started talking at once. We stopped for ice cream afterward, the same flavors we'd always ordered, sitting at a picnic table with the court order folded safely in my purse. I didn't feel victorious. I felt, for maybe the first time in years, like myself. That night, I sat down to write my father a letter. My first draft ran for pages. Every missed birthday, every broken plan, every time Sharon said something cruel and he said nothing at all. But I realized he already knew every bit of it. The problem was never information. It was choice. He'd chosen her comfort over my existence, again and again, for 12 years. So instead of pages, I wrote 3 words. She was right. Then I folded a copy of the court order into the same envelope, addressed it to his house, and walked it down to the mailbox myself. I didn't follow up. I didn't check. The letter was a period at the end of a sentence, not the start of another conversation. But in a small town, walls are thin and news travels fast. A few days later, my mother came home from her hospital shift saying a coworker mentioned my father had come in for a blood pressure check, looking like he hadn't slept. The following Sunday, my grandmother heard from a friend at church that he'd sat alone in the back pew, head down through the entire service, and walked out before it ended. He showed up at the bookshop on a Wednesday. I was behind the counter when the bell over the door rang, and there he was, standing between 2 shelves, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Can we talk?" he asked. "We are talking," I told him. He said he didn't know it had gotten that bad. "Yes, you did," I said. He asked if there was anything he could do to fix it. "You can't unring a bell," I told him, "and I don't need you to. I just needed you to know why." He looked at me for a long time, and for the first time in my life, I saw something on his face that wasn't anger or self-pity. It was recognition. Then he turned around and left. Word eventually made its way to me, the way it always does, that he and Sharon had a real fight at home, not one of her usual carefully managed disagreements. She tried to blame me for what was happening. He told her, "You told her she was never my daughter in front of everyone at her graduation. She was right, Sharon. And she's right because I let you make it true." After that, according to the neighbors, Sharon went quiet for the first time in years. In the weeks that followed, my new name settled into place around town the way news always does, a little quieter every day until it just became normal. Mrs. Whitaker adjusted my name tag without a second thought. My old teacher sent me an email saying he'd always known I was stronger than my circumstances. The DMV updated my license with the same routine efficiency as anything else. On the other side of town, a couple of Sharon's friends quietly stopped returning her calls. My father started going to church alone every week. One evening, over cold pasta at the kitchen table, my mother finally said something she'd been holding on to. "I never talked badly about your father in front of you. I made that choice early because I didn't want you carrying my anger on top of your own." I told her she'd done the right thing. "Maybe," she said, "but I should have told you sooner that you never owed him your patience." That night, for the first time since I was 6 years old, I watched my mother cry in front of me, not the muffled, hidden kind I used to hear through the wall, but real, open tears. "You did protect me," I told her. "You and Grandma, every single day. That's why I'm Whitfield now." On my first day at Ridgewater Community College, the professor called roll. "Emily Whitfield." "Here," I answered, and it fit, the way a key finally slides into a lock that had been stuck for years. A girl next to me leaned over and asked if Whitfield was an Irish name. "English," I told her. "It means a clearing near white fields. My grandfather was a carpenter." She told me her own last name, Carter, was about as common as they come, and we laughed about it together. She had no idea about the courthouse, the notebook, or the 12 years that got me there. And I didn't need to tell her. That's the strange gift of a new name. It doesn't carry the old weight unless you choose to pack it in yourself. Through my grandmother, I learned my father had started seeing a counselor on his own, driving out of town twice a week even though Sharon didn't want him to. He's doing what he should have done 12 years ago, my grandmother said. It's late, but it's not nothing. A month after the hearing, a handwritten letter arrived from him. 2 pages, the most words he'd given me since I was 6. He wrote that he was sorry, that he wasn't asking me to forgive him or come back, and that he was starting to understand things about himself he didn't like. I put the letter in my desk drawer. I didn't write back. Some letters deserve to be kept. Not all of them need an answer. When my new driver's license came in the mail, I studied the photo under the fluorescent lights at the DMV. In my old photo, I looked like someone waiting for permission to exist. In this one, I looked like someone who had simply stopped asking. That weekend, cleaning out old boxes from under my bed, I found the notebook again. 47 broken promises documented in handwriting that had grown from a child's careful print into something sharper and more sure of itself. I didn't throw it away. I put it in a box with my old stuffed animal and a class photo, things from a life I'd outgrown but hadn't abandoned. I keep it because it proves I wasn't imagining any of it. I gave him every chance a person could give. I want to be honest about something. I didn't change my name to hurt my father. I changed it because carrying his name was hurting me. Every time a teacher called out Coleman at roll call, I heard the echo of a man who said he'd be back by Friday and never was. For 12 years, I believed that if I was just good enough, patient enough, he would eventually choose me. He didn't. And I need you to hear this part clearly. That was his failure, not mine. A child should never have to earn her father's presence. Presence isn't a reward you win, it's a responsibility you show up for. Those 3 words in my letter weren't written as a weapon. They were a mirror. And sometimes a mirror is the only thing that can reach a person who's spent years looking away from himself. I don't know what happens next between my father and me. Maybe he keeps going to counseling. Maybe he writes more letters. Maybe someday I'll open that drawer and write back. I don't know yet. But whatever happens, it will happen on my terms, with my name, in my own time. If you're carrying a name, a relationship, or an expectation that never felt like yours to begin with, you're allowed to put it down. Not out of hatred, not out of revenge, out of self-respect. Because self-respect isn't something anyone hands you. It's something you build, one decision at a time, until it's strong enough to hold your weight. My name is Emily Helen Whitfield, and for the first time in my life, my name finally sounds like me. It's October now. The trees along my grandmother's property line have turned gold, and we're sitting on her porch the way we have since I was small enough to fit on her lap, 2 cups of chamomile tea between us. You know what your grandfather would say right now? She asked me tonight. About damn time. We laughed until the crickets went quiet. I looked up at all those stars you can only see out here, away from any city lights, and said, "Hey, Grandpa Arthur? It's nice to finally meet you properly. I'm Emily." My grandmother reached over and squeezed my hand, the same steady grip that's held me up my whole life. And that's my story. If it made you feel something, anger, relief, recognition, anything at all, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Have you ever let go of something that was never really yours to carry? A name, a relationship, an expectation someone else placed on your shoulders? If you've been through something like this, you're not alone, and your story matters too. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. My name is Emily Whitfield, and I chose it.